Hello and welcome to MCN, and welcome to a test that I have been looking forward to for a very, very long time. Now, before I go into the bikes that you have clicked on this video to watch, I think we need to have a little bit of a history lesson and talk about traditional 600s. Now, 600cc bikes, 4 cylinders, triples, they kind of came to the height of their powers in the mid-noughties when supersport bikes really mattered. World Supersport was incredibly competitive, and we had Japanese and European manufacturers really dicing it out to take the 600 top spot. Well, those days are sadly over now, and as supersports got more extreme, more cramped, more revvy, more track focused, they became really difficult to ride on the road, and unless you were really biting the screen and really kind of taking risks and stuff like that, they kind of weren't that enjoyable to ride. They were bad for commuting, they didn't have any grunt at the bottom, they were too wristy. I should know, I had 2 of them, a GS6R and a ZX6, and unfortunately as a result of that people stopped buying them, and the class has kind of fizzled into nothingness in Europe now. And you can still buy things like the Yamaha R6 Race, but it's not road legal, and you can't buy any 600s on the road anymore, and that's a real shame. But actually what it's also done is open the floodgates to a new age, a new wave of sporty middleweights that are that little bit more friendly, a little bit less extreme. You don't have to scream them quite so much, and they're not going to snap your wrists off every time you take it out on a Sunday. And that's led to the bikes that we have now, and the bikes that you can see around me right now. So to my left we've got the Aprilia RS660, and then here we've got the Honda CBR650R, which is the only 4-cylinder amongst them, and the bike that really started this new age. And then on the end, we've got Yamaha's R7, which has arrived for 2022. So to see how these bikes compare to the golden age of really focused 600s, we've got 2 days of intensive testing. So today, we're gonna have a great day on track, and tomorrow, we're gonna ride some of the beautiful roads of Sicily. So stick around, and if you've made it this far, why not give us a like and subscribe whilst you're here. So that's the track element of the test done. So let's get into the bikes. And it hasn't just been me riding around today. I'm joined by Nevesy.
Hello there.
Hello there.
How you doing, all right?
Very, very well, thank you.
Had a good day?
What's not to like? Racetrack, lovely motorbikes, very happy.
Yeah, it's been a lovely, lovely day. And a lovely place to test these bikes as well. It's sort of a narrow track, it's quite small, there's lots of bumps, undulations, twists and turns. It's a real tough test for bikes of this ilk, and kind of proves that they can be fun in their own right as well, even though they're not super cramped and super focused like your GS6Rs and ZX6s of back in the day. So let's get into them. And I reckon we should go straight to the R7 because, well, this is the one that everyone's talking about this year. This is what's new for this year, and you obviously went on the launch of it, and now you've ridden it here. So,
yeah. I mean, I was really impressed at the launch,
yeah.
On the road and on the track, but we were riding with a bunch of other R7s, and when you ride this against the other 2, I was really surprised today that I was disappointed, because mainly down to the engine. It hasn't got the power of these 2. It's very short revving, you can't hang on to gears between corners, and for that reason it kind of feels quite awkward around the track. The brakes aren't so good. It's got that R1, R6 horrible kind of spongy brake feel. The ABS is really intrusive. It's a shame really, because this MT-07 engine is fantastic in the naked, but it just feels really flat compared to these 2.
Yes, this has got 72 horsepower, that's got 90-ish, that's got 100-ish, and even though the straights aren't that long here, you do notice it, don't you? Sort of almost straight away that this feels a little bit breathless compared to the other two.
Exactly. But that's a shame really, because I was really looking forward to riding it. I thought the fact is, you know, it is what it is. It would make up for the power deficit, and it hasn't really. And it is a shame because it looks like an R1. And I went to a recent tyre launch where there was this bike and a bunch of other super bikes, and quite a lot of the following journalists got on this bike thinking it was an R1, disappeared up the pit lane, quickly came in when he realised it wasn't. So a little bit disappointed actually.
Yeah, and I'll kind of echo that really. You know, I'd not ridden this yet before today, and opening the garage door at the track and seeing it this morning, it looks $1 million. It looks like a proper little sports bike. It's got the clip-ons under the top yoke. You know, it looks like it's fast, stood still, isn't it? Really. And then you kind of get on it and you think, I just want that little bit more. And it's a little bit soft under braking, and the ABS kind of gets involved, and you've got to sometimes carry an extra gear where the other ones don't, and also actually the quick shifter as well, optional quick shifter on this, and sometimes we get stuck in fourth going up to fifth.
Yeah, it's a shame. And one thing worth noting, we're at this lovely racetrack called Racamolto in Sicily, and to make the bikes, give them a level playing field, we put them all on the same tyres. If you didn't, they were on such varied tyres, then the Aprilia has the best tyres standard. You'd be testing the tyres and not the bike. So we've got Pirelli Diablo Rosso 4 Corsa, which are kind of a step between sports tyre and track day tyre. And on bikes like these, they've got more grip than power. They're fantastic. So yeah, there was no restriction on grip, was there, when we were going around? You could absolutely ride these to the limit, but the engine really lets that down.
Yeah. Let's go on to the Honda then. And I will be honest, I thought this one was going to be a bit soft, because I've ridden this bike in the past, and it's, compared to the other two, you're kind of sat in it a bit more. It's quite low down, bars are quite upright, almost feels like a naked with a tiny fairing on the front, and I thought it was going to let itself down a little bit on the track, but what do I know, because I was completely wrong. I've been really impressed with this today, and it's so rare nowadays that you get a middleweight 4-cylinder that you can just rev the pants off, and I know when you came in earlier you were saying that was, you know, something that was, you know, nice for you as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can trace this back to the CBR650R FS of the early 2000s, which was a comfortable super sport bike, and they've kind of carried on with it in one form or another. It is very soft. The ABS comes in really early, but it doesn't do anything wrong, and that engine is amazing. You can just absolutely scream the bejesus out of it. And it just loves it. You know, through each gear you think it's going to blow up, but it doesn't. Gearbox is nice and smooth. I've ridden this before around track, so I wasn't surprised really. But what I was surprised about, I thought the fact that's an R7 and it's a race bike would make up for the power deficit, and it doesn't. This is more powerful, especially down this straight. This monster's the Yamaha, and the Yamaha can't really close it back because it's not very good on the brakes. It's got a weird front end which is all spongy. Yeah, the Honda's better than that. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing I'll add to that as well, you know, you talk about the revvy engine, because you've got these two parallel twins here as well. Sometimes I'm shifting up and I'm looking down, I've got 5,000 revs left. You just don't get engines like that anymore.
No.
But I'm glad that they do, because like you say, this has been really, really good fun. I wish it didn't quite have such super long hero blobs and had a bit more ground clearance sometimes on the track.
Yeah.
But then to do that, you'd kind of end up ruining it on the road, and that's really what these are for.
It's a good road bike. Yeah.
It's nice to know that they're like the R7 and this and the Aprilia. It's nice to know that they can be fun on the track if you want to kind of let your hair down every so often.
And it's really well made, really well finished, really nicely designed at the front.
Yeah,
not so
like
much at the back.
Yeah.
Monday morning design team there, Friday afternoon design team there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of design, let's move on to the Aprilia, because it looks like an RSV4.
It's a baby superbike, isn't it? Although that is a baby R1, isn't it?
Yes.
But yeah, it's got the looks. It's beautiful looking, isn't it?
It's really, really nice. Before we go into the Aprilia though, let's address the elephant in the room. It's got an Olin shock on it.
Yeah.
Bit cheeky of Aprilia to add that.
This is a press bike from Aprilia, Italy,
Yes.
and they put this Olin shock on, which is naughty because we're comparing completely standard bikes. But what I would say is the reason this is the best around the track by a long way, the reason it's so good is because of the engine. The shock keeps the bike's shape, it keeps the back end high, so it's nicer steering through the corners, but it's not the reason it's so much better to ride than these two. If even this had a standard shock, you've had one of these in standard trim,
right.
and you know how good it is. It would still run rings around the R7 and the Honda. But this engine is phenomenal. It's half an RS650R factory engine, although I think they should have sliced it the other way, made it a V-twin and not a parallel twin. But even so, it sounds like a V-twin. The airbox raw is fantastic. It's got a really nice balanced chassis, really nice brakes. It can use all the grip that these tyres give it. It's got lots of ground clearance. Pretty much faultless, really. And in actual fact, today I've been riding an RS650R factory around the track, which is obviously faster. But really, it's just it's wrestling you the whole way around. And after about 10 laps, you're knackered. On this, you can probably go nearly as fast, but for longer. And it's just really, really enjoyable. You know, you can see why racers, the Rosses of the world, use smaller bikes as practice bikes, because you can hone your skills without the stress of riding something really fast. I could ride this all day, it's amazing. I did the launch of this just on the road. I was really impressed, and this is the first time I've ridden it on track. And I absolutely love it, it's brilliant. And also, it's roomier than the R7. So for a tall rider, it's great, it doesn't feel like a small bike. The only problem with all of these bikes that I think it's a very English thing as well is because they don't have 200 horsepower, because they haven't got, you know, all the bells and whistles. A lot of people look down their noses at them, but if you actually ride one of these fast around the track, it just makes you smile.
Yeah. And let's not forget, about 100 horsepower, that's essentially the power that early noughties, late 90s super sports were putting out, you know.
Yeah.
And I think early R6s made a very similar power figure to this.
Yeah.
So you might turn your nose up, but actually,
exactly.
You know,
and it's half the price of a cutting-edge super bike as well, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And these things are just super bikes are like watching a horror film, but they just try and scare you. You like being scared, but these are like watching a comedy. They just make you laugh. They're brilliant.
Absolutely. Right then, well, I reckon we should get these loaded up, and tomorrow's another day. We're going to spend some time on the road.
Get out on the road.
Awesome. So that's the end of our road day and the end of our lovely test here in Sicily of these 3 new age middleweight 600s. It's been fantastic, I can't lie. But before I talk to you about the road element, I want to talk to you about lap times. So at the end of our track test, a chap called Fabrizio Lai took all 3 of these bikes on our Pirelli Diablo Rosso 4 Corsa tyres for a couple of laps to set down a bench time and data log the whole thing. And I can tell you that the Aprilia was fastest. It did a 1:10, and that was the fastest that he could get out of it on the day. Then came the Honda, which did a 1:12, and then came the Yamaha, which did a 1:13, which kind of backs up what we were saying yesterday when we'd finished on the track. So enough about the track, let's get onto the road. And after a day on the beautiful roads of Sicily, it's thrown up yet more surprises, because what's actually happened is the Yamaha has now jumped the Honda for being better on the road, whereas yesterday the Honda was much better than the Yamaha on the track. So let's talk about the Yamaha first, because that's the new one, that's what everyone wants to know about. It's been really, really good fun today. Makes about 72 horsepower-ish, give or take, and on the road that's more than enough. It's got none of the electronic aids that the Aprilia's got or anything like that. It's got ABS, this one's got a quick shifter as well. And it's been perfectly adequate, and these Pirelli tyres have been superb as well. It's the sportiest of the 3, and actually when we've been coming to this final location in and around town, it has actually got a little bit wristy. So, you know, sort of shades of original 600s creeping in there. But outside of that, it's been a real engaging, real fun bike, and that soft suspension's actually worked in its favour, going across the sort of normal bumps and ruts and things that you can come to find on the road. Nevesy's no longer here. I've packed him back in his box and he's ready for his next adventure. But before I did, he actually said that the Yamaha was his favourite today, and it really shone on the road. And it's really surprising that how a bike could feel so underpowered on the track can feel so engaging on the road. But really, that's what matters. Let's talk about the Honda now, because yesterday it really surprised us on the track. We loved the Revy engine. We loved that sort of traditional 4-cylinder that you have to scream. But on the road, that's actually not really worked in its favour. It's really smooth once you get above sort of 3,000–4,000 RPM. Below that, it's a little bit jerky on the throttle. But because you've got to scream it, whereas these two have got power at the bottom, you're kind of left wanting more, and it feels a little bit dull sometimes. Might sound like I'm being a bit harsh, but when you've got these sort of growly twins and then you've got this 4-cylinder, you're just kind of left a little bit cold. It's really well made. It looks fabulous from the front, looks like a Fireblade. And if you had one of these, it would be great for sort of everyday commuting, weekend work and stuff like that. But in this company on the road, it just feels a little bit more like an appliance than a pleasure vehicle. But in isolation, again, it's brilliant. Yesterday on the track, we criticised the Honda for sort of the ABS getting involved quite a lot under braking, but on the road, you don't really notice that, and it feels composed, it feels plush, and it's comfortable, and it's sort of the most upright of the three. And as I say, it's a lovely road bike. It's just not the most performance orientated and the most fun, I suppose. And for me, that's a really important part of bikes. So let's talk about the Aprilia then, which is just lurking somewhere over there, just over my shoulder. Now, I love the Aprilia RS660. I talked about it yesterday on track, but I had one of these for a year. I very nearly bought it at the end of the time. I just think it's a superb bike, and after 2 days riding it here in Sicily, it's just sort of reinforced that opinion. It's got a parallel twin like the Yamaha, but it just wants to rev that bit more, and it's got more power, and it growls like a V4. It sounds like a little MotoGP bike, and it's got a quick shifter and a blipper, and it's got golden forks, and it's got Brembos. It's got all of the bits that I like as a bit of a magpie for bling. It's also really comfortable. It's got a nice thick padded seat, it's got upright bars, it's got relatively roomy pegs. And I reckon I could do a bit of touring on it, being 5'6". Nevesy said it was maybe a little bit cramped for him to go touring on, but did comment on it being comfortable and roomy, just like the other two really. And because you've got that extra power over the other two bikes, as I said, about 72, about 90 horsepower, about 100 for the Aprilia, you've got a little bit more versatility there as well. You know, it really shone on the track, and that power gives it flexibility on the road. And what it means is you get a really lovely new age super sport road bike that you can take to a track day for a track evening or a full day and have fun and not really worry so much about being swallowed by 1000cc bikes down the straight. Away from the power though, you know, it's littered with electronics, and it is the most expensive of the bunch. And to be honest, on the road, we didn't really need any of those electronics. In fact, they were off for most of the day. The only thing we really used on the road was the quick shifter and auto blipper, which, to be fair, was really, really good. But the anti-wheelie, the traction control, stuff like that, I'm not sure it's necessary on a bike with just under 100 brake. Maybe get rid of that, sell it to us slightly cheaper, and yes, please, I'm straight down the Aprilia dealership and I'm going to buy one. So that leads us to the verdict then. So in first place is the Aprilia RS660. Now in second place, it's the Yamaha R7, and in third place is the CBR650R. Now, to justify my reasons, the R7 looks the business, it's got a really engaging engine on the road, but it couldn't win today because it's not got that versatility on track. It's a little bit too slow, it's a little bit soft, and the ABS really does get involved when you slam on the brakes. Outside of that though, in isolation, it's a really good fun bike, and it's probably the closest in terms of style and ride to the good old days and those 4-cylinder 600s we used to love to scream. The Honda 4-cylinder engine, nicely made, looks like a Fireblade at the front, and in isolation again, it would be a great all-rounder for you to use to commute, for weekend fun. But in this company, that 4-cylinder engine on the road just doesn't feel quite as engaging, and I'd want a little bit more grunt from the bottom end and a little bit more of a rumble that I could hear. So on to the Aprilia then, and you know, what needs to be said? It looks like an RSV4, sounds a bit like an RSV4 even though it's a parallel twin. It's got all the bells and whistles on it so you can brag about it down the pub, but arguably doesn't need all of those electronic bells and whistles. It also handles really nicely, it's comfortable, and I reckon you could go touring on it. So for me, money no object, it has to be the Aprilia on the day. It's the best of the three and we've all really enjoyed riding it. So that's it from us. I hope you found this video useful. And if you haven't been before, make sure you come on a riding holiday to Sicily because it's absolutely beautiful. Thanks so much for watching.